Being 7 o'clock and all of us are here who are going to be here, we'll call the meeting to order and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so I'd like to welcome everyone to the June meeting of the Union Township Planning Commission. Roll call, please.
Buckley.
Here.
Clerk Cody.
Here.
Darren.
Here.
Fuller is here. Melky.
Here.
Shingles.
Here.
Squattrito.
Here.
Webster.
Here.
And LaBelle is excused this evening.
Okay, thank you. So we last met, had our last regular meeting on May 21st, and those are the minutes that you have. So are there any corrections to the May 21st minutes?
Is there any way you can turn up the volume a little bit?
That's up to our technical folks. Is my volume up? Can everybody hear me or no? Do I control the volume from up here or?
No, it's all over here.
Okay. Well, turn it up as high as you can. I don't like to shout, it's just me.
Well, not to blow everybody out, but just so everybody can hear.
All right. So I'll do my best. Everybody speak into your microphones. So we last met on May 21st, and those are the minutes. Are there any corrections to the May 21st minutes?
Hearing nothing, so I move to approve.
And
Support.
Okay, so there was a motion made by Webster and there was a support by Cody to approve the minutes from May 21st as prepared. Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor of doing that, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we have our minutes. Correspondence and board reports. Well, Peter's on the computer, so we'll let him be. Board of Trustees, anything to report?
We, at our last meeting, we approved the SUB 2019-01 on the preliminary plat review. And then we approved the adoption of SUP 20-1903. I said wrong. 2019-03 on 1982 East Remus Road filling station.
Okay. Any questions for Commissioner Cody? Zoning Board of Appeals?
We had two variance requests last meeting. One was for a height variance on a residential auxiliary building. We tabled that. And then the other one was a structure that had been built within the setback by a retail place. They'd built a auxiliary building. And so we gave them a timeline till basically the end of the year to get that structure moved. So we denied the variance in that case to build within the setback.
And it had already been built?
Already been built.
Okay. And why was the other one tabled?
Giving the applicant additional time to make his case.
Other questions for ZBA? Okay. Sidewalks and pathways?
Nothing to report.
Okay. Any other correspondence that's not related to tonight's business?
No, I just have some information about our special meeting that we're trying to set up, the results of the doodle poll, but I'll go over that at the final board comment.
All right. Okay, so we'll move on. Approval of the agenda. Our agenda has 5 items on it. Are there any other items that need to be on tonight's agenda? As Peter indicated, we'll have a brief discussion at the end about scheduling our next special meeting with the firm handling the zoning rewrite. But other than that, anything? If not, a motion to approve the agenda would be in order.
Second.
So a motion was by Shingles with a second by Milky to approve the agenda as prepared. Further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we have our agenda. Public comment. So at each Planning Commission meeting, we have a portion towards the beginning of the meeting where individuals are invited to address the Planning Commission on items that are not on tonight's agenda. Reason for that is if there's public hearings, the comment for those will come later, and other items on the agenda are not necessarily, we're not required to take comment on them. So at this point, the public comment is just for items that are not on tonight's agenda. There'll be an extended public comment later for all items. If anyone would like to address the Planning Commission on any item that's not on tonight's agenda, we ask you to come forward to the podium, give us your name and address for the minutes, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. So public comment is open at 7:06. And as usual, when we have a crowd, they're here for something else. So we'll go ahead and close that back up. And again, there'll be extended public comment later. So new business. We'll take them in the order that they are in the agenda. So the first item is item A, SUB 2019-01. You may recall last month we looked at the at this in a preliminary sort of way, and then it went to the Board of Trustees, and now it's back to us for a final review. Peter, is there anything you want to say about this?
Since the last time, so the Board of Trustees, they've had their preliminary review. Different in your packet this time is a copy of the court order directing that the plat be amended. And so reviewing the plat myself, and you've had the opportunity to review yourself, you're comparing the court-ordered plat to what the applicant has supplied us with to make sure that that plat that the applicant has supplied us with is the same that was ordered by the court. In my review it is, and so I'd recommend acceptance of the final plat, forwarding it on to the Board of Trustees for them to approve the final plat.
Okay, thank you. From what I gathered from going back to last month's packet, it looks like Exhibit F is the redrawn, or the one that's the new, what will be the new one, which is supposed to be in accordance with the court ordered. When I read it and compared it, it seemed to follow what the court ordered, but it's open for discussion. Peter may or may not be able to bring it up.
I looked it over, everything looks good to me.
Yeah.
Chair, is there a public hearing for this particular item?
Not that I'm aware of.
No.
No.
Okay. Well, we deliberated this a lot last month, so for sake of discussion at least, I'll move to approve the final plat and forward it to the Board of Trustees.
Support?
Okay, so the motion was by Milky with a second by Cody to approve the plat and forward it to the Board of Trustees. This is the one I was talking about. So this Exhibit F is the one that the applicant was directed to prepare by the court. And in your packet from last month, there was a list of all the changes that were asked for, the vacating of the Chipaway and portion and Isabella Street portion, and then reconfiguring the lots. Any questions or concerns? Ready to vote?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the motion is to approve this and forward it on to the Board of Trustees, which would be, I assume, for final approval. All those in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It looks good. Looks like it's what it's supposed to be. So we'll move on to our next item. Next item is a special use permit request, 2019-04, for public and institutional use by and the applicant is the Isabella Conservation District, as authorized by the property owner. Because it's a special use permit request, it will have a public hearing. I'll let Peter introduce this topic.
So this is the owner is Steve Gramza, the applicant is Isabella Conservation District, and inside your package you have a copy of a purchase agreement authorizing the Isabella Conservation District to seek this special use approval on behalf of the actual owner, Steve Gramza. If approved, the likelihood the sale will go through and the project will move forward. If not approved, the sale will not be moving forward. The application is for a public and institutional use for a government building. Isabella Conservation District is a government organization. They are seeking the special use in an ag district for a 60 by 100 foot building that'll be used as an electronic waste facility. They've supplied you with the items that will be collected at the facility. They typically, as of now, have used the Isabella County Fairgrounds as a collection site. If this is approved, this would be the new collection site. They've also indicated other uses in their application, such as a tire pickup and other uses of the property. These would all be allowed under the government building of a public and institutional use. This project will require a site plan approval review. As of now, they are seeking the use approval before they seek the site plan review. Of course, site plan review, there's money involved, and so the idea is to see if the use is allowed first before seeking site plan approval and spending the additional money. This is a sort of time-sensitive project, as in the letter that was supplied to you. There's involved grant funding. They did supply you, though, with at this point, a conceptual site plan, and so you'll be able to look at that to give you an idea of where the location of the building is. But at this meeting, we are not here to review and approve the actual site plan. We are here to hold the public hearing and then consider a recommendation of approval to the Board of Trustees. Just note that there are criteria that we will go over. You do have the ability within a reasonable time following the public hearing to make that recommendation. However, as we go through the criteria, if the applicant is able to meet all the requirements, we are obligated to make a recommendation of approval to the Board of Trustees if all requirements are met. Well, I have had some comments, nothing in writing. I'm sure there are many in the audience that are here to speak tonight. Some comments that I've heard up until the meeting that I just want to sort of correct out there is not proposed at this time in writing from the applicant any kind of electronic or liquid waste or a waste dump or terms that I've heard. They have thoroughly listed all the items that they will be accepting on site, and that, of course, anybody who's come to my office, I've distributed copies of that information, and it's been online. And so today we are holding the public hearing. Notice was sent out to owners within 300 feet as required by law. Notice of the public hearing was also in the paper. And so during this public hearing, it's time for anybody and everyone to speak in favor or against or indifferent on the project here. And also the applicant is here, so they will be here to answer any questions. I would ask the audience members that we have an opportunity for the audience to speak. After the public hearing is closed, we would ask that the Planning Commission is able to deliberate, hear from the applicant, and then they will discuss the matter. If there is additional questions that the board has for an audience member, they may call on you, but we want to restrict the conversation after the public hearing is closed to just the board members and who the chair calls on to speak. That's all.
Okay. So as Peter indicated, Do you want to?
Yep, sure.
He'll bring up some portion from this application. So here's what we normally do with these. The public hearing is the opportunity for the public to address the planning commission, to have their say, to give voice to any concerns that they have or questions. The applicant, after the public hearing is closed, the applicant will have the opportunity to present their project, to stand for questions from the planning commission, and you'll be able to hear what is said from that. But we normally don't include the applicant in the public comment portion because they have their own dedicated time to address the commission. Also, I would ask each person to address their comments to the planning commission. If it's a question, then the question will be noted and commissioners may choose to direct that question to the applicant, but it's really not a give and take between the public and the applicant. It's simply members of the public stating their concerns and or questions during the public comment. So we want to give everyone a chance to speak. So once I open the public hearing, we'll ask each person to come to the podium, give us your name and address for the minutes, address your comments to the commission, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Once everyone has had an opportunity to speak, then if someone wants to be recognized for additional comments, we'll consider doing that based on time and other considerations. So with that having been said, the public hearing for this special use permit application is open at 7:17. Is there anyone who would like to address the Planning Commission on this application? I saw your hand up first, so please.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Roger Fuller. I live at 292 South Mission Road, which is precisely across the street from the proposed variance. Peter, would you happen to have a copy of the growth boundary map in your repertoire over there? I draw the committee's attention to this because it's obviously something you all put together, and it states at the bottom here that the proposed property is outside of the growth boundaries. And at the bottom in here, it says rural preservation. Rural preservation areas outside the growth boundaries should be maintained at a low intensity rural character of development that will not adversely impact the natural features and agricultural use. This property is zoned agricultural, correct? Correct.
Yeah.
It is zoned agricultural. Agriculture should be promoted and feature rezoning requests for residential should be prohibited and prevented leapfrog development. If we're going to prohibit residential, why would we allow industrial? And then it goes on down to say in that same area, the growth management boundary. The residents of Union Township have consistently said that preventing the natural beauty and agricultural character of Union Township and controlling urban sprawl are important priorities. The township also desires to be able to provide efficient infrastructure service to support development, which there is none on that side of the road. One of the most effective ways to meet both of these goals is growth boundaries. We've already set the boundaries, correct? And then from the zoning ordinance, if I could read a couple paragraphs real quickly for you. This is under public institutional use, subheading Q. The second bullet point reads that such use will be in conformity with the character of the adjacent neighborhood. We know what adjacent means, right? That's the property next door to it. And every property next door to that property is either farmland or residential. We can go a quarter mile in either direction and find the fairground or the other salvage yard, but it speaks to adjacent, which is adjoining or next to. And then it says that these facilities are essential to the service of the neighborhood and the community and cannot feasibly be located in a zone where they are already allowed. There are, without a doubt, my wife looked today and in less than 3 minutes found 30 available properties already zoned for industrial use that are vacant. So there are properties available, ready to go. We don't need to rezone what we already have. And then if we move on again to the growth management boundary piece, it says under section D, oh, I already read that. Actually, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Mike Walton. I have the property just south of the section where the parcel we're talking about. May 29, 2019, Isabella Conservation District letter. I don't know if you received it, but if you look through this this letter, about the last paragraph down, it says the facility will have a 36 by 36 office space attached. This will allow the district staff to work at this facility year around. It's commercial. It's an office, right? They have an office on Somerton. So now they're gonna be here year round. So it's not just a collection. It's an established business, okay? The other thing is what I didn't hear from Peter Gallant was, let's set the scene here. For the second page, if you read, it's just not e-waste. It says, we will accept the following: automotive liquid products, oil, right? Aerosols, household cleaners, acids, oil-based paint stains, photography chemicals, pool and hot water tub chemicals, fluorescent CFLs, batteries of all types, bug sprays, pharmaceuticals, pesticides, fungicides, herbicides, insecticides, rodenticides, mercury, fertilizers, thermometers, thermostats, and all identified liquids and granular powder. So it's not e-waste. Okay? Now, if you go down to the fourth bulletin, or tire recycling collection, collections will be held in the back of the building on a 60 by 60 concrete slab. I don't see this being inside. It says it right there. Okay? Now, where I work at the university, and every year at the university, I get a phone call for e-cycling waste on the south side of the football stadium. I think everybody knows where that's at. I deal with Union Township every year. We get the insurances from you guys. We have a semi-trailer out there. I even got the coffee pot for you plugged in, right? People can deliver their stuff right there. No problems. No money involved. We have local MRF for recycling. Matter of fact, as soon as I turn the corner in East Valley, there's a guy right there, scrap metal. So it's not that you can't get rid of it. It's just your state funds to build here. That's what it's all about. It's money. Okay? They collect at fairgrounds. So it's not a point that they can't collect. And I don't see that people have to collect every day. But they just said their offices are going to be there all day. So it's not a collection point. Let's face the facts here. It's an office. That's what it is. It's a commercial building. And you know what that means. Once commercial, always commercial. And who's to say down the road somebody else doesn't take that property over that's already commercial? Because we know once a building's built, it's typically there. What about the tax revenue? Land payers are paying tax revenue on our parcels. What are they paying? What are they contributing? Nothing. Then what are they going to do the water and sewer? They're going to take the water sewer from East Valley, run it down the road 1,200 linear feet in front of my property, and I got to be assessed for water and sewer for a commercial building? What am I missing here, guys? I mean, this is common sense. Roger said it right. We have a lot of facilities here in Mount Pleasant, in the surrounding area, to do this collection. We have collection points right now. Do we need another one? It all goes back to state dollars. There's a grant. That's what it goes back to. So, I said my piece, my neighbors are here tonight, we've talked over the last 2 weeks about this, and I hope the people on the board will listen to their people. That's what I hope for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to address us on this topic? Please?
Hi, my name's Robert Gilton. My dad owned the property where Walton's is. My granddad owned from Baseline to Valley, great-granddad. It is over 100 and some years old, the farms are. I can't see putting that recycling crap up there. And that's about it.
Thank you.
Just sit right here. I'm not squeezing somebody.
Hello, I'm Gail Beadle. I live at 208 South Mission Road. Neighbors with them, directly across the street. Not a very good speaker, but luckily my neighbors have said most of what I wanted to say. But I still wanted to represent my family and my property. And we talked about not having the water going through there. Apparently it's on the other side of the street to an extent. We all live with well water. We're all very eco-friendly. We try to protect our groundwater. We drink it, we cook with it, we bathe with it. Even storage facilities can have risks of contaminating. Like you said, a 60 by 60 slab compared to all the land around. It's a busy road if you've ever been out there during Fair Week. Please remember us that live there, because not a lot of people do. And I can't imagine having a big building on that road. It's 55 miles an hour. Our children go to school, get on the buses. A little ridiculous. I'm glad that Emma looked up, because we talked about how many buildings are available. So I'm kind of just touching on some of that stuff and just saying it for myself. There's a lot of places we can reuse. It's the second R in recycling, is reusing instead of doing a whole new build. There's many buildings that have sat vacant for years and years and years that are designed for this type of thing and not in a farmland. And I agree with, once it's, who can say that they won't start adding to their services? They have almost 5 acres to deal with. Just because they're only open 2 days a week, this, whatever, I didn't take into consideration the fact that if there's an office there all the time, it is a business, and they can increase their load anytime. Is there anything to say they're not going to start accepting other things besides just the e-waste once they have this building in place? And I don't care if they put a pollination garden, I do that myself. I have my own. And once again, I agree. I wanted to state too that once it's rezoned, you can't rezone it. This is a residential area. We all have children. We all live around here. I just, once you start letting that in, and for me, biggest thing is the risk of, to the area, to the resources. We all have well water. We don't have municipal water. Anything that's in that area, there is risk for accidents. I wasn't, I knew we didn't have enough time to go into the hazards of having facilities nearby and the accidents that can happen to the air and to the water. And I guess that's about it. Like I said, most of them tapped on it. I just wanted to add my 2 cents into it and agree with them all. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there, my name's Marissa Beadle. 208 South Mission Road is my childhood home, and I actually traveled all the way from California out here in order to talk about this issue when I heard about it. This area, I'm here not only for my family, I'm here for my younger siblings, as well as my neighbors who have been there my whole life, supporting me and their families as well. This area is a residential and agricultural place that could easily be negatively affected by a facility such as this. Not only environmentally, where we could experience groundwater contamination on our drinking wells. Again, this is what I drank for the whole 22 years of my life. I bathed in it. Our livestock uses it. We use it to water our plants and do our home gardens. We're also going to look at chemicals in the soil due to runoff. We have to clean those concrete slabs. They're going to take a power washer and it's going to go right into the soil and the groundwater. And I think that's something that we're not fully considering. And now knowing that there's liquid waste involved as well, I could give you guys the 20-page papers I wrote in college about groundwater contamination as a result of industry. I'd be happy to forward that all on to you. We're also looking at effects on plants, livestock, and humans. Again, in an agricultural area, we're looking at the crops of farmers, their livelihoods, their livestock, again, how they make their money, as well as the humans that are doing this business. And we also have the risk of air quality. If we have trucks coming in, extra cars, we're affecting the air quality of the people living there as well as the livestock. And it's really just a huge environmentally negative impact. We're also looking at decreased quality of life for residents due to increased traffic, noise and air pollution, and possibly even light pollution. If this is open 24 hours a day, that's shining in our windows, our neighbors' windows, and affecting the wildlife in the area. And we have some really cool wildlife. We have bald eagles, red-tailed hawks, great horned owls, bobcats, deer, you name it. We see them across the street every single day, and that's going to affect all of that. The things that really make Mount Pleasant in Michigan like such a beautiful place, that livestock and that beautiful rural countryside. I also do have some questions, both for the committee as well as the developer, about what kind of traffic studies have been conducted. What impact is this going to have on the road? Do we even have the capacity to have a building such as this and still have safe traffic flow for the families in the area? What noise studies due to increased employee and user traffic have been conducted? How is this going to affect the residents as well as that wildlife? And then again, probably the biggest thing for me is what is that wildlife and environmental impact? Again, we have really cool wildlife in the area. How is this going to affect that? I also would like to address the Conservation Committee and kind of ask why using an untouched piece of agricultural land is an option when they could easily reuse one of the many vacant industrial sites in Mount Pleasant. There's 30 of them that are equipped to do this and better equipped to house the facility itself for less money, as well as take on that increased traffic from the users. So I would like to know why they don't look at one of those options, again, that reuse aspect, rather than a new build in an agricultural zone that we need now more than ever to fight to protect. Again, I am all for the safe disposal of electronic and e-waste. However, I don't think it makes sense to destroy a piece of the environment to do so, especially one that houses families. And I don't find our request to look at other sites that are already established within the city as industrial zones to be, unreasonable. And that's kind of all I have to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Other public comments? Last call. Okay, well, we thank the public very much for their comments on this topic. We've got a record we can refer back to, and we've certainly heard the comments, so we thank you, and public hearing is closed at 7:35. At this point, we normally proceed to give the applicant a chance to address the planning commission and really tell us anything they'd like to tell us about their project, and also stand for questions, which perhaps we will have some questions. Is a representative of the applicant or the applicant here?
Hi, my name is Pete Lorenz, Lorenz Surveying and Engineering, 3229 Westfield City Road, Wayman.
Crystal Butler, I work for the Isabella Conservation District.
I'd just like to explain the project. I think there's a few misconceptions out there about what we're proposing and what we want to do with this building. So I'd like to go through the things that we've prepared, and then touch on a few of the issues that were talked about in reference to concerns. First of all, we are proposing a 60 by 100 building. They are correct. There is a 36 by 36 office connected to the building. Okay. As far as the building goes, we're going to make this a nice looking building. We're looking at two-tone coloring on it. Put some stone veneer on the front to bring it up 3 feet, just so it doesn't look like a standard pole barn out in the middle of a field. So, as far as traffic circulation goes, we're proposing 2 driveways to get some circular movement there. As far as on-site traffic goes, when there's nobody at this facility, it will be gated and locked, so there won't be free access to the building at all times. This will be strictly collection in regard to waste. There will be no disposal of any kind of waste on the site. Strictly collecting it for transfer to someplace else. Okay. The uses that we're proposing. Electric waste. Go ahead.
Electronic waste. The concerns of the household hazardous waste. We have collections in the spring and in the fall, and we've always done them at the fairgrounds because we've not had a facility or a place to do them. We hire a licensed drug and laboratory from Plainwell, Michigan. We do it on a Saturday from 8 to noon. There's plenty of volunteers. You know, they come in, we have probably 8 or 10 volunteers. Then the drug and lab company, they have sealed drums, 50-gallon drums that they use. So the stuff is unloaded, they seal it in the drums, they put it in the trucks, it's gone by noon. We've never stored it, we never would. So the stuff that is listed there is hazardous waste. Those are the things that we do collect. And to date, actually, we started our first collection in 2013, and we've collected over 255,000 pounds of hazardous material. So what people are doing is they're storing this in garages and basements and sheds. And so when we had the flood, we had a pretty big collection because stuff was ruined, you know, got wet, bags broke. So honestly, people really don't have a place to take that stuff. So the collections, we only hold them twice a year from 8 to noon. So I think there was a big misconception that we would be housing this waste, and we never would. Electronic waste, we will house it there. You know, and there's a list of that stuff too, TVs, laptops, computers, those kind of things. But unless they're put in a landfill, they're, you know, then they're hazardous because they're leaking mercury and heavy metals and stuff. But the way we're gonna store it is in the building, dry, and it would be collected probably on a quarterly basis when the recycling handlers, when there's enough poundage for them to come and get it. So, and we will not work there. We have our own office. We would work there 1 to 2 days a week depending on the need. So, and tire recycling, we've kind of decided that we would continue to do that at the fairgrounds The last one we had a couple weeks ago, it was pretty large, and it could be a problem there. Right now, maybe in the future it might not be, but we will continue to do tire recycling at the fairgrounds.
Yeah, they are proposing this as part-time, and there isn't anticipating full-time staff being at this office. Right now, anticipating 2 days a week. If the demand gets greater, could be a little bit more, could be less. Don't really know, correct, Chris?
Right.
So, I mean, this is a part-time operation, so there isn't looking at being daily employees there. The operation will run typically 8 to 4:30, so it's not like we're talking about all hours of the day for this operation, so.
And that's just for electronic waste to be dropped off.
Yeah, I mean, there was some concern raised about the environment. What they're proposing is actually a benefit for the environment. If this electronic waste doesn't get recycled, it ends up in a landfill. And right now, there was some discussion about there are points to drop it off, but correct me if I'm wrong, Crystal, that's just for Union Township, not for the county at large. So this is looking to address a county problem, not just the Union Township.
Point of order.
Yeah.
Public comment has been addressed. We're listening to the applicants now.
I was talking to myself.
We do have a funder that is going to fund this for all the residents of Isabella County, and that's Hewlett Packard. And we also, you know, all of our other collections are free to everyone in the county, and those are 2% funds that we get from the tribe. So all of our collections are free.
And the comment of once commercial, always commercial. We're not asking for rezoning, special use, specific for this applicant. Peter can probably explain that better than I can, but once it's operation, it's not like somebody else can just move in there and have a commercial building in the ag district. So I think that addresses that concern that was raised.
Well, I'd just interject that the special use, once it's approved, does remain with the property, so another owner could come in and do that special use. They can't
As long as
do.
it's the same special
Yeah,
use.
it has to,
Yes,
yes, that's
yes,
right. It
yes.
has to be the same special use, but it does stay with the property. But anyway, proceed.
And we do, yes, we are proposing a 60 by 60 slab of concrete in the back. So when we do household hazardous waste, the cars would be on that. Any spills would be, you know, cleaned up. And like I said, that stuff it's an 8 to noon collection, and it's gone in 4 hours. So, and that's spring and fall. And, you know, we would never take those contaminants any other time, because we don't have a place to house them, and we don't want to be, you know, responsible to house any hazardous waste like that. So, you know, in the Conservation District, we're, you know, our goal is to work with landowners, information, education, and, you know, provide technical assistance and cost share when available to, you know, address all their resource concerns. So, you know, the Conservation District was established in 1949, and, you know, that's what we do is provide, you know, information and education and technical assistance, and our goal is to improve the environment, not make it worse.
They're here. They're obviously ready to stand for questions. I guess I'll just start because it was brought up by the audience. I mean, when you look at this type of operation, it does seem like a more natural fit might be some sort of industrial area. I mean, if you think about where recycling has been over the years that I've been in the Mount Pleasant area, you know, first it was up on Pickard, now the MRF is out where it is. Did you look at any other properties? Do you have other options? I mean, why did you choose this particular place?
I guess it's conveniently located to our existing office, and smaller parcels are very expensive, and you know, it was something that the Conservation District could afford.
Other questions from commissioners?
And then, so the transfer of the, pick your chemical, it stays in its primary containment and put in a secondary containment. There's no transfer of fluids, no combination of fluids at that site proposed?
Do you mean the household hazardous waste?
Pick your chemical. There's no transfer of chemicals, they stay in their primary
Oh,
containment?
exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
they have the drums all open and lined up, and they're also lined, and so they, take whatever it comes in, whether it's Drano or whatever, and it goes right in the drum.
But stays in its primary containment?
Yeah.
And then any spill, say it's a leaky cap, what have you, is it wash down or is it a Zorball or some dry
Normally,
absorbent put on it?
landowners always bring those things if they have a leaky thing in like a plastic tub. They always have totes because they're loading it into their vehicles. So those things are always, and they recycle the totes also.
So in your years of service, you've said you've had spills. For whatever reason, the intent at this slab that doesn't have a sump to collect chemicals is to clean it up with dry absorbent, or are
They
you
have
ever gonna
all-
wash it down?
Right, the drug and lab company, they have all their absorbent materials. The worst, really, the worst thing that we've had happen is a broken light bulb. And sometimes they'll bring you bags of fertilizer that are ripped or torn. That stuff is swept up, and they have all their absorbent materials, they deal with that. They have, they wear their hazmat suits and,
The transfers are all made indoors?
actually, no, it's done outdoors.
It's done outdoors?
Yeah.
Can you speak to the frequency of, you mentioned doing recycling days at the fairgrounds. Can you speak to the frequency of how often you guys do that there already?
Once in the spring and once in the fall,
Okay,
on a Saturday from 8 to noon.
okay. And that's for the liquid waste?
The household
hazardous waste.
hazardous waste.
What about other materials? Are you doing other materials there at the fairground?
No, we do tires,
Okay,
and that's once in the spring and once in the fall,
okay.
from 8 to noon. And then this electronic waste, this building, the reason there is a office space there is because this is grant funding, and they wanted us to be able to make it available 1 to 2 days a week. So if we are gonna work out there 1 to 2 days in the winter, we have to have a space that we can work in that's warm, that has a bathroom, and, because that building's not gonna be heated.
Is the grant funding specifically for the construction of the facility or for the ongoing maintenance of the facility?
The
Ongoing
construction
operation.
of the facility.
Okay.
We had a 25% cash match, and it was basically the recommendation of the tribe that we apply for that, and they gave us the 25% cash match, and the rest of the funding will come from DEQ, or Eagle.
Brian?
So following up a little bit on Commissioner Buckley's questions, I think you addressed, and it's stated in here regarding tire collection twice a year, hazardous waste twice a year. So the open 2 days a week, is that primarily because you're encouraging the electronic waste?
To make
And that's
it-
what you anticipate those on a regular basis, the 2 weeks, or 2 days a week, right?
Right.
So do you have a planned schedule? Is that a weekend thing, or?
No, it would be during the week from 8 to 4:30, and I guess,
2
we'd
days,
have to
okay.
see, it's a
2
new
weekdays.
program, it'd be during the week, so.
But outside of the special days for liquids, or
Yeah, it would
hazardous
be
waste,
still- yeah.
it's only electronic waste?
Only electronic waste,
And it's all stored indoors?
all stored indoors. Yep, and then we would hire a licensed recycler to pick it up, probably on a quarterly basis, because, they want so many pounds to make it worth their while to come get it.
So what happens when, because that's market driven, correct? The recycler is purchasing that waste.
Well, yes.
So what happens if there's a decline in the market and your stocks? What happens if you exceed capacity to store it? Do you shut down storage? Do you not take any more waste until you're able to clear what you have?
I think that we would, if we ended up with an abundance, they would pick it up more, or like monthly or instead of quarterly.
I guess what I'm asking is if there is a decline in metals prices, for instance, and suddenly it's not as profitable for that recycler to accept that material, and you have an abundance of that material and they don't want it anymore, what happens then?
I don't know how to answer that, I guess.
Okay.
I think that we're always gonna have electronic waste,
Yeah.
and there's lots and lots and lots of recyclers out there.
Are you familiar with, I've heard that scenario at the recycling facility on the north end of town. I've heard that different streams of waste they either quit taking it or, but it's because it's all market driven that I've heard those scenarios where they no longer accept something and now we have something on our hands that we can't get rid of. But that's not something you've encountered in?
No.
Okay.
No, and honestly, Hewlett Packard, they are the ones that have chosen the recyclers
Mm-hmm.
because they're paying for it.
Okay, I have a question. I'm confused about this spring tree and shrub sale. Like,
Oh, the Conservation District does a spring tree and shrub sale every year, and we always do it at the fairgrounds. If we had our own building, we would do it there.
so it'd be open more often
Well,
during the
what-
week, not just the two.
We take our tree orders at our office on Somerton, and then a week before we distribute our trees, they're brought into the facility that we usually work in, and we break them down and put them into numerical orders, and then the people that ordered them would come on a Friday from 6:30 and then 7:30 to 6 is normally when we open that up, and pick their tree orders up.
So now it's like 3 days a week instead of the two.
Well, this would be 2 weeks in April.
The pickup's only once.
Yeah, the pickup is one
The pickup's
day.
only one day. It's not every Friday, it's.
No, it's one day.
And where do you get the trees from? Like,
All over we get them from nurseries within the state of Michigan.
and you store them where? There?
Well, we get the trees, we take our orders, we get the trees, we have them for probably maybe 10 days. We break them down, put them in the orders, then the landowners come the following Friday and pick them up, and they're gone. Then we do that once a year. And we have, some volunteers that come and help, so during that time, there may be 5 or 6 vehicles there volunteering.
And then it says you're having a garden. Where's the garden gonna be next to the?
In the back of the building, probably. A native plant garden.
And that's for selling?
No, it's just for pollinators and stuff. Bees, butterflies, that kind of thing.
Can you speak to, in your letter you say that currently the electronic waste collections only benefit a few of our approximately 72,000 residents. We heard some members of the public describing some e-waste recycling events around the county. Can you speak to that issue and why those aren't sufficient?
I know Union Township has one, and it's only for Union Township. Central has one, but not everybody in the community can take their electronic waste there. It's not open to the Isabella County residents.
Mm-hmm.
That's why.
Okay.
In your letter, you state that the waste is never stored, but yet you said it's stored until...
Electronic waste will be.
Electronic waste will be stored?
Yes.
Okay.
Until the recycler picks it up.
Okay, gotcha.
Because unless it's outside or, in the elements, it's not an issue.
I had a couple other questions. Just to come back to the liquid waste one more time. Over the years you've been doing this at the fairgrounds. In the years that you're aware of, you're saying there's never been a spill of anything liquid that had to be cleaned up, or?
know, there may have been, but like I said, the recyclers, they have their, you know, stuff that they clean
Mm.
those contaminants up with.
Okay. I'm not that familiar with the fairgrounds, but is it currently done on some
It's
sort of
blacktop.
cement? Okay.
It's blacktop.
Okay. And then my other question was, one other thing that was brought up by some of the residents was utilities. So what services that are not already out there is the building going to need?
We have in our bid to drill a well and electricity, because I think it has natural gas, doesn't it?
We'll be looking at on-site septic system also.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's no need for additional utilities to be drawn out to that site?
No.
The current slab that you work on now at the fairground for the chemical transfer, is that 60 by 60 or is that?
Actually, no. It's, what we do is they have tables that are lined with heavy plastic, and as the cars come up, we unload them right next to the table, so we're not even utilizing a 60 by 60 space.
So are you unloading over gravel?
Nope, over blacktop.
Over blacktop, okay.
Has this plan been vetted through any of the outside agencies, mainly road commission that would approve 2 driveways?
No, it has not. Our initial concern was to address the special use. We realized as part of this formal site plan approval that we'll need to go back for road commission approval and other outside agencies.
So the commission looking at a plan with 2 driveways might not be allowed.
It may not. It may be, we'll have to get input from the road commission as far as what's going to be allowed there as far as our driveway entrances.
Other questions from commissioners? We still have our list to go through, and they're not going anywhere, so we can always ask them additional questions if we have them, but other questions at this time?
I'm curious, so you talk about this being partially grant funded. In the event that, so the way the special use works with the planning commission is that we would either make a recommendation to approve or deny, but we only make a recommendation that goes before the board of trustees. If the planning commission were to make a recommendation to deny approval of this, and you were forced to look for another site, how would your grant opportunity, how would that be impacted in terms of your ability to look for another site?
I don't know. We should know in the next couple of weeks if, you know, all of the grant funding is going to be awarded. We would be forced to look for another parcel.
So is your grant funding portable? I mean, in the sense that you're applying for the grant independent of the acquisition of this land, and that you could potentially take that money anywhere? Anywhere that you have a viable site?
We could.
Okay.
We could.
To build off from that a little bit, I believe all their estimates in making application for the grant money to this point has been based on this specific site and this layout. So the cost estimates play a part in the amount of the grant that they requested. So
Sure.
whether those funds would be adequate if this was moved to a different site or not, I guess that would be yet to be seen.
Is it
whether
a-
that would actually work or not.
Is it a recurring grant program?
This is the first time I think this infrastructure money has been available.
Okay.
Any other questions from commissioners? Again, we have the opportunity to ask for more questions, or ask more questions if we have them. Well, if not, then I'll invite you all to have a seat. Thank you very much. What we're going to do now is in the zoning ordinance, there is essentially a checklist or a list of of requirements for a special use permit to be granted. This was what Peter was referring to earlier. We normally go down the list one by one, and we talk about it, and we see what the consensus of the commission is in regard to informing our recommendation to the Board of Trustees. So I'll start by reading number one, and then I'll ask what commissioners' thoughts are on this. The first requirement is that the special use shall be designed, constructed, operated, and maintained in a manner harmonious with the character of adjacent property and the surrounding area. Brian.
Well, first, I'll say I'm very grateful for Isabella Conservation District and what they do for our county, and so I'm a big proponent of what they do and the fact that I think they actually make our environment safer, despite some of the concerns that we heard. But environment, I think the argument that I had coming into this and that I heard from some of the residents is regarding the master plan, the growth boundary, and this is not a agricultural barn, even though it's very pole barn type building, even if there's brick, etc. It's not that kind of use, and I have concerns about putting this kind of use in that type of environment, which is agricultural residential. So I think it's not harmonious in some ways.
I would agree with him. Large commercial structure with large asphalt parking lots, pads, 6-foot tall chain link fence with gates doesn't fit there. It is not harmonious with what I see when I drive down that road.
I mean,
if I may add,
a cement plant and a recycling facility, or a metal, not recycling, metal.
Quarter mile
You
down
don't
the road,
quarter mile
right?
down the road. You don't have to drive
Right.
very far to find chain link and industrial.
yeah, I had similar thoughts. But it is outside our growth boundary, and we're supposed to protect that. And if it was just a large barn that wasn't going to have a lot of traffic, it might feel a little different because it wouldn't change. I mean, you see large barns out in agricultural districts, but it's going to have some traffic, even if it's only 2 days a week.
Other opinions on this one?
Well, certainly, I struggle with, again, I do believe that we need to have those facilities to have the recycling of these particular waste products. We need that in the county. Is this location, as I look at, could it be designed and look, I could see the design and constructed close to an agriculture. I could see it. Now, whether it's operated and maintained in the manner harmonious with the character of the adjacent property, that's where the struggle comes for me. It's the last part of that, not the front part, the last part.
But again, we got a county fairground, draws a lot of traffic through there, and that's a main thoroughfare from Mount Pleasant to Rosebush. Anybody that lives along that road is accustomed to traffic.
In the winter, I hear snow plows plowing parking lots that isn't there, that was never there. I mean, there's maintenance issues that this thing's gonna bring.
It's not all day long. It's only for a couple hours, a couple days a week. So, this is a comment.
It is for the use though, right? So like somebody else could buy it, but they could be open 24 hours a day, right?
No.
We could restrict
I
that.
mean, is that-
We could restrict that.
I don't know why any recycling facility would be open 24 hours a day.
No, to drop off or whatever.
And
As a drop off thing.
I kind of wanted to follow up on that if I may, because one of the concerns that came from someone in the audience here was, I'm trying to look at my notes here, adding services. We could absolutely restrict that, right, to this letter, right? And we could restrict it to specific hours of operations. So the SUP could be written such that they can't go beyond what we allow.
I mean, if it was restricted to 2 days, they'd have to come back to ask for more days of
Right.
operation.
Right. Or if they added additional hazardous waste or a different service, they would have to come back.
Mhm.
So same with hours is my point.
Okay. Any other comments on number 1? All right. The next two are fairly somewhat related. Number 2 is the special use shall not change the essential character of the surrounding area.
I think we've already discussed that in 1. In my opinion, it will.
I think it changes it significantly.
Any contravailing opinions?
Yeah, I mean, I struggle with it because I don't, like I say, I mean, what distance do we apply? And our code doesn't address what distance we apply to the actual geography. But again, I mean, within walking distance, I can get a very industrial feeling right there. So, but it's admittedly in a field and it's across from residential.
And I had the same thoughts I mentioned earlier regarding proximity to the fair, Higgins, the scrap metal, et cetera. I think where my mind went on that issue was the master plan, speaking to that growth boundary, and that was what delineated that as far enough away that it's in a zone we're not supposed to be doing this kind of stuff in, right? Whereas south of there, we've allowed it.
Agreed, yeah.
I guess to me that's the difference of where it's at, right?
Okay. Other comments on number 2? Number 3, the special use shall not interfere with the general enjoyment of adjacent property.
Same comments as 1 and 2.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, number 4, the special use shall not be hazardous to adjacent property or involve uses, activities, materials, or equipment that will be detrimental to the health, safety, or welfare of persons or property through the excessive production of traffic, noise, smoke, odor, fumes, or glare.
I do believe that they've done everything they can to reduce that, so I'm gonna have a struggle with that in regards to whether in fact it's, again, I think that they've done everything they do to reduce the hazards to the area. From the letter, that's how I would have to, again, rely on them as the expert is the conservation that they would protect the land.
Well, I mean, that's actually their business.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, I would agree from environmental impact.
Mhm.
I don't have the same concerns that maybe I heard because I think they're going to be good stewards of the materials that come in.
Well, not to mention the fact that half of what they already do is already taking place on the fairgrounds. I mean, it's taking place literally in that area and has been for years. So I find that to be that particular one, I find that to be a weak argument.
I think my perspective is that if there's not care, that this does create a hazardous environment. Now, I think the Conservation District is taking great measures to mitigate that, but if there were a spill, if there were, we're talking about groundwater, we're talking about access to other properties adjacently across the road, obviously, you can't eliminate it.
Control it.
Control it.
Right. And
But-
so there would be an increase. That line says, is there an increase? I mean, there's
If
an
there-
increased chance, yes.
But they're already collecting the liquids, the hazardous materials, they're already collecting those and the tires in that immediate vicinity.
I don't even know what approval process has been given them to do that, you know? is that piece of property zoned properly for that?
I suspect that if they're getting I suspect they can speak to it, but I suspect that if they're getting a license to have some sort of drop-off day, then it's
License.
all up to code, all up to snuff. But
I'm assuming Township has to go through the same process when we do that on the
I would
university.
expect
In
so.
regards to on Central's property.
I struggle with the argument about the chemical. I think having an engineered surface and procedures for how to clean up and the dry absorbent to clean it up, that's all a lot more than when a farmer's cleaning out his equipment at the end of the day. We're applying chemicals. I'm not saying, I'm just my argument. I'm saying I think this organization is actually going further than most of us do when we're handling our chemicals at home. We do, a lot of these are applied to the, again, this is the argument of the groundwater. We're applying it to have better crops. But we need a place like this because not everybody takes care of their chemicals. And so for those that don't have the way to take care of it, I'm not saying this is the right location. I'm back to the growth boundary. But we need this. We need this organization to be available to Isabella County. I'm not sure that's the right location, but again, I think we need to give a place where farmers can take their totes and clean them out, or take their bins and clean them out, not just blow them out on the ground or what have you. So we could do more.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree, and you know, acknowledging growth boundary issues and those sorts of things. I mean, but as we go through these criteria one by one, I find this one to just be not really hold water. I mean, we have a diner out there, we have multiple businesses that are automotive related, scrap metal, we have the fairgrounds, we have a thoroughfare there. I mean, we're bringing traffic and we're bringing business there daily, and if we have a shop that's open 2 days a week, I just don't simply see a dramatic increase in traffic or the concern with hazardous waste. I mean, the hazardous waste is being done there right now. So it's
caution the audience to refrain from commenting at this point during deliberations. Other comments on number 4? Okay, we'll move on to 5 then. The special use shall be adequately served by essential public utilities and services, or it shall be demonstrated that the person responsible for the proposed special use shall be able to continually provide adequate services and facilities deemed essential to the special use under consideration. The said facilities or services shall be approved by the Central Michigan District Health Department. In answer to a question, they've indicated the desire to drill a well and to maintain a septic system, so those would obviously have to be approved by the Central Michigan Health Department. So I'm guessing that this one probably is one that wouldn't arise particular concerns. Okay, something is stuck. Any other comments on number 5? All right, number 6. When deemed necessary by the Township Board or Planning Commission, the use shall be adequately screened by distance and landscaping to protect the rights of all adjoining property. We haven't said anything about screening yet. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Would we not address that during the site plan?
Site plan.
So
But
then
it-
therefore that
unless we
would
had
help-
special requirements that beyond what the zoning already requires, we'd want to address it here.
The
'Cause
letter
we
does.
can't ask for anything beyond what zoning requires at the SPR.
Okay, is
site
there
plan.
anything in the zoning that would, I mean, I didn't see anything, so,
Typically, the screening is going to be when it's abutting like residential, and the way our zoning code is currently written to the west, correct? So
Yes.
the neighbors that spoke here, there wouldn't be screening for them because they're across the road. So I would doubt that our zoning code would actually require, maybe Peter's looking it up, I see, would actually require screening against agricultural zone to the north. Peter?
So the when it comes to a public and institutional use, it's one of an unusual one where it gives you a little bit of a latitude. Other uses, they're much more stringent, and you have to meet each bullet point. Number 2, it's letter Q, 30.4 Q, 1 through 4. Number 2, the second sentence, it states that Planning Commission shall establish requirements for setback, lot size, side yard, parking, screening, and other conditions necessary to conform the same to the character of the adjacent neighborhood. And so I believe the intent there is with this public and institutional uses, it gives you the ability, there is the required lot sizes, setback, screening for maybe an ag district or an R2A district, but when a public and institutional use, it does give you the ability to increase, decrease, add more than what's required for just that district. Again, all to make sure that it conforms to the same basic character of the adjacent neighborhood. So if you have a preliminary, I guess a conceptual site plan, it's not to be reviewed, it's not a final site plan, but if you were to see something at this point really shoot out to you, it wouldn't be unacceptable at this time to say, well, when you come back before us, I really think you should have, so many trees planted, no less than 10 feet on center, all the way around on, both side yards, rear yards, something like that if you wanted. It would be applicable at this time to say that you want that. So that way the applicant can actually put down any of your desires at this point. But that's, again, only if you have an idea after looking at the conceptual plan and, like an idea of screening. Well, I really think there should be screening on this side or, something to that nature.
Okay.
I stand corrected, Denise.
It's only for this one, though.
Right,
So
right.
you're 99%.
If I look at, if I'm looking from from a bird's eye look, it's hard to see it from the road. That was a little bit more difficult for me. From the bird side, I would say the only area that I would look at in regards to screening is to protect the home to the north. And it's only in the front part of the, if I look, it's only really, it's only the front part of the parcel. That would be the only area that I would be concerned with. That we may wish for them to consider that as that right there to the home. That would be the only that I would see from that bird's eye would maybe of concern.
I would tend to agree. It's fairly substantially screened right now, actually. When you do look at the road view.
Right, I'm just thinking of looking at the north property line.
The north. It's the south property
right
line
here.
of the house, yeah.
This right here, the north property line of the, right in there. Not the whole way, only possibly right in there. Because that looks like a barn to me. This looks like the residential house right there. Unless I'm mistaken.
No, it is.
That would be the only one concern I would have, only. Other than that, the rest of it doesn't look.
Peter, that's the waste injection well right to the north, correct?
Say that again?
The property to the north, that's the waste injection well that was put in a few years ago? Is that correct? I think that's where it's at. So it's a waste injection well, I think. So fracking waste gets injected into the ground there? Yes, by Summit.
And that was my only concern. If I had to think of a screen, that would be the only. But I'm not also one who thinks that they should put trees there just to put trees.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna suggest we can revisit that if we get to the point where it appears that we're headed in that direction. Number 7, I guess this one is always my favorite to read anyway. The Township Board or Planning Commission, in connection with approval of any application, may require reasonable undertaking by the applicant to guarantee and assure by agreement, including a performance bond to be posted by the applicant or by some other reasonable surety arrangement at appropriate stages of the planned development, that the development will be executed in accordance with the approved plan. Okay. Not really a judgment on our part, it's just a procedural sort of thing. Number 8, that such use will be an asset to the township.
I mean, I think that.
The
one
use,
says right.
whether it would be there or somewhere else, the use itself would be an
Use,
asset to the
yes.
township.
Necessity, I would say.
Yeah. All right. 9 and 10 are also procedural, and then there's a special part that Peter was referring to for this type of use. Requirements and conditions of each individual special use permitted shall be complied with unless otherwise mentioned within this section. So whatever conditions get set have to be complied with. And then any special use permit may be revoked by the Union Township Board upon recommendation of the Union Township Planning Commission whenever the operation fails to comply with any of the required conditions or may be subject to the penalties of this ordinance. A special approval of a special use permit shall be valid regardless of change of ownership, provided that all terms and conditions of the permit are met by any subsequent owner, so it is transferable to subsequent owners. And B, in instances where the development authorized by a special use permit has not commenced within 1 year from the date of issuance, the permit may be reconsidered and or voided at a regularly called meeting of the Planning Commission. And then further on in 30.4, section Q, there's some additional requirements for public and institutional uses, of which this would be one. I'll go ahead and read those. They are located within Ag, R1, R2A, R2B, and R3 districts. This, as we said, is agricultural. And then number 2, that such use will be in conformity with the character of the adjacent neighborhood and that they are essential to service the neighborhood or community and cannot feasibly be located in a zone where they would otherwise be permitted. The Planning Commission shall establish requirements for setback, lot size, side yard, parking, screening, and other conditions necessary to conform the same to the character of the adjacent neighborhood. So I'll go back to the first sentence. They are essential to service the neighborhood or community. It cannot feasibly be located in a zone where they would otherwise be permitted. The zones where this would be permitted without a special use would be industrial.
I don't think so.
Or not? Are there any, I guess, are there any zones where this would be not a special use?
I wanted to bring up the zoning map. This isn't a rezoning application. Some people have used the term rezoning. It's an often used term, but in this case it's not applicable. But I wanted to bring up the zoning map to just give you an idea, because there's been talk of the MRF, Material Recovery Facility, its proximity location, this parcel's proximity to other districts. So this is the parcel in question. This is Mission Road. This is Baseline. So this is the applicant parcel. You go down Mission Road and you get this B5 zone. This is a highway business district. Here is River Road, where you branch off and you can make your way to the Material Recovery Facility, commonly known as the Recycle Center. And so this is in an I2 district industrial. So an industrial district is what holds the Material Recovery Facility. As far as its applicability in a business district, I haven't looked to see. I haven't prepared myself for that. we can look over at the permitted uses in a business district.
That's why we need the grid in our new plan.
Should have brought it.
Yeah. So in a B5 highway business district, the first permitted use is any permitted use in a B4 district. We'll get to that afterwards. B, restaurants including drive-ins restaurants, bar, grill, cocktail lounges, retail sale, used new cars, boats, trucks, on and on. Amusement enterprises, plumbing, heating, electrical shops, tire and battery shops, sign painting and servicing shops, and there we go. And then it lists special uses. Special uses would be filling stations, multi-use structures, planned shopping centers, planned unit developments, and self-storage buildings. If we revert back to B4, because it's stated that any use in a B4 is allowed in a B5, we get down to the first one, generally recognized retail businesses. This is not what that would be. Personal service establishment performs services on premises, but not limited to repair shops, trailer shops, beauty parlors, barber shops, on and on. Office building is allowed in a B4 for any of the following occupations or services, but not limited to, such as executive, administrative, professional, accounting. Establishments that perform services on the premises, such as but not limited to bank loans, companies, insurance offices. Professional services, such as but not limited to offices of doctors, dentists, restaurants, other places serving food, beverage, theaters, assembly halls, concert halls, or similar places of assembly when conducted completely within closed buildings. Bowling alley, billiard hall, indoor archery range, indoor tennis courts, indoor skating rink. Private clubs, fraternal organizations, and lodge halls. Business schools, colleges, and private schools operated for profit. Auto wash when completely or partially enclosed in a building. Bus, train, other forms of transportation systems, passenger stations, automobile repair shop, garage, hotels, motels, churches, child care centers, any retail business whose principal activity is the sale of merchandise in an enclosed building requiring a license. And then special uses, amusement parks, filling stations, miniature golf drive ranges, mortuary establishments, multi-use structures, planned shopping centers, planned unit developments, retail sales, on and on, self-storage buildings. So the office portion, this has been a point of contention with projects before, that there's an office presence. Is that the real main principal use of the building? Should that be allowed just because there's an office attached to the building? So it's clear that it would be allowed in an industrial district. Just going through the list, I'm not sure if this one would or would not fit in a B4, B5 district.
As a use by right.
As a use by right or special use.
When I went through the zoning ordinance, I could not find in any of the zoning districts that this particular use is allowed by right. It's all done by special use permit associated with their, what do they call it? Their public and institutional use. That we don't have anything where it's permitted by use.
Which is, right now anyway, that's limited to ag and residential.
Not permitted by use, but only by special use permit.
Right. But am I misreading this? That you can only do it in those?
Right, by special use permit. That's the
Right.
way I would it, yes.
Right.
So that's what they're asking. So there is no zoning area that is permitted by use. So they could, if they would go into any other sites, an industrial site or whatever, they would still have to come to us from a special use permit.
And we couldn't grant it because of Q.
Yeah.
I think the issue with that, to me the issue there is that I think that contemplates, when it talks about public and institutional uses, I think it presumably contemplates things like schools and other things, whereas this is clearly a pseudo-industrial type of operation. So I just don't think it's contemplated by our zoning ordinance.
But is this considered a government building?
It's government funded, government organization.
Public and institutions for a government building.
It's a recycling receiving center.
Yeah, that's how I would look at it too.
That's
I mean, it happens to be
Owned by a
funded
government.
by the public.
Our ordinance doesn't address who pays to build it. Our ordinance addresses
Right,
its
it's
use.
use. And so I would say, I look at it the same way Alex does, that its use is what's critical here.
Right.
Okay. And then the other two items in that section are entrance and exits as specified in 30.4.B.2 and driveways and parking areas as specified in 30.4.B.2, which is those are in the early part of 30.4, just requirements for ingress and egress and those sorts of things. So, I guess to bring us back, we have, what is it, 60 days to make a recommendation to the...
For special use permit, the planning commission shall study, I've lost my page. So within a reasonable time following the public hearing, the planning commission shall review the application for the special use permit, testimony received at the public hearing, and other materials submitted in relation to the request, and make a recommendation to the township board. Approving or denying the special use application shall be in accord with the criteria for approval stated in section 30.3 and such other standards contained in this ordinance that relate to the special use is under consideration. So there is no exact timetable. It's simply asked within a reasonable time following the public hearing.
Okay. So it is a recommendation to the township board. It does have to be justified. We've had some discussion. We can have further discussion. We can have a motion. What's your pleasure?
I'd just like a little bit more clarification then on, so it's a special use in residential and ag. Are we saying, is the planning commission saying as a body that we would only be supportive of this type of project if it was in an industrial area? Because my concern about having to throw, we're setting an expectation that we have to throw a project like this in industrial areas, that our industrial areas are tucked away. They're not highly visible by your average resident who's not driving, to pass an industrial area every day. So I'm just curious, is that what the planning commission is saying, is that this project would only be considered in an industrial zone?
My opinion is that. I mean, I don't drive around with my computer monitor that's broke down and look for a place to take it. I would look online, where do I take a broken computer monitor, and purposely drive to that facility.
But I think we're all used to that, living where we do. We wait for the ad to come out, tell us the date, the time, and where. I guess my argument isn't just, I just don't think it's the right location.
Right.
It is permissible by special use permit in other zones. So we're not just looking for an ag residential or ag area to put it. I'm just not in favor of, why are we going that far out? We're getting further away from the bulk of the people. So why not keep it in town or in our industrial area that might be built for the traffic patterns or what have you. I'm not saying that they don't have the traffic already at the fairgrounds, but they don't have all the traffic necessarily.
Commissioner Buckley, I'm assuming you brought up the point just prior, though, because of Q, listing that if it's a public and institutional use, if that's how we see it, it must be in a ag or an R district? Is that why you asked?
Yeah,
that?
that's what I'm trying to determine.
Yeah.
What, if we send this back and say, we don't want this, and I'm playing devil's advocate. I have concerns about the location of where it is, although I do think it's an essential service that we should have in this county. But I'm playing devil's advocate because if we do send this away, I would hope that it comes back. And I want to know what the planning commission is going to say about this when it does come back. So what are we telling the applicant in terms of where they should be looking if we send them away from this parcel?
Yeah, because I have to think that from my perspective, most of our ag zones are outside the growth boundary, and I would find the arguments that I'm having or stated already, I would find in most of those same zone properties throughout the township. So I would agree that if I find another ag one, I'm probably going to feel the same way about that property as I do about this one. And if it's in residential, I'm going to feel that same way. So I see the conundrum here.
I just feel like it's an undue burden to expect that the only place we could put this is industrial. I don't know that this is the right spot, but I don't know that industrial is the only location that we can put simply a repository reseller. They're moving it out. They're not storing it on site for indefinite periods of time.
I would think a lot of business zones would be appropriate. Highway business, other sorts of things. I mean, this is something we may want to bring up with our consultant.
Well, I guess that's what I'm asking is that if we're coming back and we're saying this can only be considered in residential or agricultural, but as a planning commission we don't want it approved in residential or agricultural, what are we telling the applicant?
Right.
I'm sorry.
Just a great question.
Yeah, but again, I think the issue is that while this is technically classified, I suppose, as a public and institutional use, there's a wide range of what falls under that. That's a wide umbrella, and so this particular one, I don't think those are the only places it should go. In fact, those are probably the places it really probably shouldn't go.
Okay, where I'm struggling a little bit as I look at the future land use map is this would be, if I'm reading our map correctly, this is rural buffer. Is it not? If I'm seeing that, yes, it is outside our growth boundary, and I understand that. This is considered in a rural buffer zone.
Correct.
Right, so it says that or generally do not have sewer and water, which they don't, but are appropriate for agricultural, sure, low density residential, and other uses allowed by zoning. So this is allowed by zoning in this area, even though it's a special use permit, but it is still allowed. Right? So typically this buffer is located on the fringe. We are on the fringe between rural and more urbanized areas. That's where we're at. So why, I'm struggling with why we don't think this would be an appropriate place. I'm just struggling with that. From this particular description that we have in our future land use map, I'm just struggling with why we don't think this is appropriate.
I would say that it is an allowed use, but only by an SUP, by special use. Therefore, it has to go through this process of
which we are doing.
We're all in
Which
agreement
we
with
are
that,
doing.
yes.
So it's
But
a
it is
qualified allowed use, right?
Right.
So if we're not allowing a use on the fringe of our growth boundary, where would we allow it in a residential or agricultural district? I just want to give the applicant some guidance.
And so therefore, isn't this?
When they
I'm
move
sorry.
forward.
And actually, if you look at it, this may be the appropriate, from what we have in front of us, this may be the appropriate place.
I don't really want to pay the play developer and try to find a parcel for these people. What we have in front of us is, does this fit on this parcel? We could sit here for hours trying to find them a piece of property.
That's right, and that's not our job.
If
No,
you did
and I'm
want
not
to,
suggesting that. I'm suggesting what zoning districts are they looking at? That's what I'm.
Industrial? And any special use that we list in there. What they're presenting to to us tonight doesn't feel right.
And so if the board is ready to, as board members have said, we can discuss this on and on forever. So you do have within a reasonable time to make a recommendation. You are not under no obligation to have to make a recommendation tonight. If you are, you can make a recommendation, whether it is positive or negative. In that recommendation, you can also, although we're not going to be playing developer, if you were to give guidance to the applicants saying that, look to industrial districts, look to what districts are allowed public and institutional. You could go as far as saying, we'd prefer not within the what is designated as rural buffer or rural preserve. That you'd want it, not in those two areas or within the growth boundary, to give some kind of guidance. Again, though, with these special use permits, it is a case-by-case situation, location. And so, although this location may not work for an ag, that doesn't mean that any ag parcel wouldn't work. Again, this is the comment that's come up the most is the location. So we do have other items on the agenda, and so if someone is ready to make a motion, we can move forward that. If not, then I think you guys should decide that maybe you don't have enough information and you're not ready to make a recommendation.
I'll make a motion to deny special use permit based on the fact that this parcel is outside our growth boundary. We have been charged by Union Township residents that it is important to protect farmlands and natural areas.
I'll support that.
So the motion was by Fuller as stated, and the second was by Shingles. Motion is to recommend denying the special use permit on the basis that the application is for a property that's outside the growth boundary and that it would use a parcel that would otherwise be available for agriculture and would go against the principle established in the master plan for preserving that type of land and that type of use. Discussion.
The only thing I would add to that is you want to include language from the criteria 1 through 10, not necessarily hinge the entire decision on just the master plan, which is used for rezonings, not special use permits. It can be used as a guide, but you can't make your decision solely on that.
But this project does not meet 1 or 2 in the general requirements for special use.
Okay. That was certainly an opinion expressed by several members of the Planning Commission.
I think 4 also, because despite the efforts, we can't guarantee that this won't be a hazardous, to adjacent properties, despite all of the potential issues, or potential attempts to keep it as a safe facility. We can't guarantee that.
I wonder what kind of guarantees the injection well has.
We have no authority over that.
What I struggle with is a growth boundary and whether or not the applicant has, how much time the applicant has invested in identifying other parcels. I do think, I would dissent on most of the rest of the criteria. I think it's going to be difficult to find. I mean, there is a auto shop, a diner, a salvage yard or a scrap yard, an injection well, a fairgrounds, all within a stone's throw of this parcel. So I think it's going to be very difficult to find, if we can't say that this is harmonious with the surrounding use in this particular spot, I think it's going to be very difficult to find a spot for it anywhere else. So it's just my take on it.
To go along with that, I think the handling of herbicides, pesticides, insecticides, doing it in the middle of a farm field where somebody's planting their livelihood, not counting on potential drift that could kill their crops or what have you, a mishap or something. I feel that the correct location is more in the industrial where adjacent properties aren't planting their crops, counting on only the chemicals that they apply to them to touch them. So.
Well, the criteria is clear. It says the special use shall not be hazardous. We cannot guarantee that.
But we can't guarantee that a farm isn't hazardous by the way the farmer uses their chemicals. I mean,
But that's not what we're talking about. Though. What we're talking about is what we're talking
Well, where
about
can
is
we
this
go?
re-
Where can we go with a special
Wait
use?
second. What we're talking about is this particular project related to the criteria. We're not talking about what something else might be.
I appreciate
so I'm just
that.
saying, as we talk about it, we can't guarantee that it won't be hazardous to the adjacent.
I'd call the question.
That's what we're talking about.
I'm just curious where we would. Where would we guarantee that?
Call for the question.
I think someone can call for the question.
Call for the question.
And I don't remember whether that requires a vote or not.
No.
We can vote.
Call for the question.
I'm good too.
Okay. So the motion, once again, is to recommend to the Township Board against approving this special use permit for the reasons stated. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Please, those opposed, please say no.
No.
In the judgment of the chair, the motion carried. We are 8 tonight, so I heard 6-2.
I just wanted you to clarify the whole motion with the 2 criterias.
Yes, that would be that this special use permit application did not conform to items 1 and 2 of the general requirements for special uses. And also number 4, if you could add that.
And you list the master plan.
Yep, and then it was outside the growth boundary where we were charged with protecting and preserving farmlands.
Okay. All right. So we move on. The next item is also an item that we've seen before. It is the proposed text amendment, the applicant Lone Maple Development. This is for the ground-mounted solar panels, and the proposal was to incorporate the new language from the proposed zoning ordinance into our existing zoning ordinance. And we postponed it in May until now. So as folks file out here, we'll try to restore some order as soon as we can. We know who our loyal audience is. It's the folks that are still here. Okay. So, yeah, just as a reminder, applicant is looking to install some ground-mounted solar panels. The current zoning ordinance only allows for roof-mounted solar panels. The new ordinance, the draft of the new ordinance would allow for the ground-mounted panels, and so the proposal is to incorporate just that section on solar energy into our existing ordinance, and do that ahead of the approval of the full new zoning ordinance. Is there anything else? I've been introducing this, but
Yeah, no, so basically we held a public hearing for this item. We postponed it. The idea that the planning commission wanted to get a chance to talk with our paid consultant that's working on our new revised, amended and updated zoning ordinance. Since the May meeting, we've been able to meet with our consultant. If you guys recall, at that meeting, one of the sections that we went over was this proposed new solar energy amendment. The applicant has proposed word for word the exact draft that has been presented to us by our consultant. And so, you know, if you have any other future questions, maybe for the applicant, I believe we're able to get any questions out that we had for the consultant as far as the intent, how the ordinance was written, how it would work. And so I believe at this time you would be able to have discussion and make a recommendation to the Board of Trustees on whether to adopt the zoning text amendment or not.
Okay. Applicant did address us in May, as I recall, so, but he's also, you're him, okay. So he's here if we have questions for him, but really the question before us, I think, is whether to take the plunge with the section on solar energy systems.
I thought we had that full enough discussion that I don't know if there's really anything more to add, so I would make a motion that we recommend to the, do we make a recommendation to the Board of Trustees to adopt this
This
particular ordinance associated with solar ground, or the solar,
Yeah, it's only the solar text amendment. That's
solar
it.
text amendment.
And it would become effective with this current zoning ordinance ahead of the new future fully revised ordinance.
Support.
Okay, so the motion was by Webster with a second by Darren to is it recommend to the Township Board the change to the zoning ordinance?
Zoning text amendment, yes.
Yes, okay. Now that's not they have to hold a public hearing and publish it and second reading and all this
Yeah,
stuff,
so
right?
the process will be they will be introduced, they will have a second hearing and adoption, and then of course for our applicant, even after the amendment is to be adopted, they still are required to come before this body with a site plan. To just catch everybody up, that's how this process started. Applicant applied for a site plan approval. I denied the application based on the use was not applicable. And so they've gone through the process of this zoning text amendment. Once this process is finished, if successful, we will then have that site plan review process before us, so.
Okay. I didn't have I had left this at home when we had the consultant in, but when this came before us the first time in May, I had found about 3 or 4 typos in this section. I just want to make sure they get corrected. One of them I did remember and I mentioned to him when he was here, but the others I didn't, so.
I would be happy to add to the motion and recommend that the consultant do a thorough examination of the text for any typos and or
Grammatical errors.
grammatical errors.
Yeah, I noticed a couple too.
Okay. All right. I guess I'm satisfied with that. Any further discussion?
I have one question. So there's no conflict with existing ordinance that they need to be repealed at all, right? I mean, this just basically is an addendum, correct?
Yeah, this is adding a new use to the
Yeah,
current zoning
so
ordinance.
We had no regulation over solar panels in the township prior?
The only mention of solar panels is for the residential use, if you have them
Right.
on your roof or garage, and that's it.
That's it.
Yep.
I just want to make sure I didn't miss something, because sometimes we have ordinances that are not necessarily in our zoning, but are separate.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, this one has some supplementary definitions that were particular to it, and I'm assuming.
I was referring more to maybe actual zoning requirements for maybe a
Yeah.
business district that might be in a separate ordinance, because there are quite a few ordinances, right,
Yeah.
that the township has that are not part of our zoning book.
Yeah. I will say, I think this is a little bit, it's not how I would have chosen to do it. I mean, I think we're trying to help the applicant out and be a cooperative community and so on, but overall, you wouldn't do it this way, but unless, hopefully it'll be this way for a relatively short period of time before the rest of it catches up, but we'll see. All right, so the motion has been made to recommend that the board approve this and go through that process. Further discussion? Ready to vote? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries without objection.
You still have some more hurdles to jump through,
Yes.
or over, right?
Yeah, more meetings to go to.
If Peter has one moment, can he, give me a brief outline of the next steps going forward through the Board of Trustees process?
We could, it's potentially, we could have the item introduced at the, this final meeting, of June, I believe June 26th, but the adoption would not take place until July.
And then once adopted, site plan review package.
Yep, so potentially, expect August, probably planning commission for for the site plan.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, so we will move on. Next item is site plan review, 2019-06, Mitchell's Deli.
Would anybody think that I would need to abstain from a site plan review?
I don't think so.
I mean, I have in the past.
Too beneficial.
I
That
mean,
was for a
it's-
special use, what was it, for a site plan, was it?
Well, I didn't on the big building site plan. I did not deliberate on that.
Well, just, let me
I mean,
get
it's a
the,
site plan.
I know.
The
Right.
use is coming.
so just so everybody,
The owner's the same.
because I know sometimes we get in a gray area. So our bylaws, just to remind everybody, and Alex is asking if he should be excused. Before casting a vote on a matter in which planning commission member may be reasonably considered to have a conflict of interest, the member shall disclose the potential conflict of interest to the commission. Failure of a member to disclose potential conflict, on and on, which Alex has not done. So before a member may be excused from casting a vote, a majority of the commission must find by an affirmative vote that a conflict of interest exists. Conflict of interest is defined as, and a commission member shall declare a conflict of interest and abstain from participating in commission deliberations and voting on a request when an immediate family member is involved in any request for which the commission is asked to make a decision. Immediate family member is defined as planning commission, spouse, yada yada. That's not the reason that Alex is given. Commission member has a business or financial interest in the property involved in the request, or has a business or financial interest in the applicant's company, agency, or association. The commission member owns or has financial interest in the neighboring property. That wouldn't be it. There is a reasonable appearance of conflict of interest as determined by a majority vote of the remaining members of the commission. So I believe the two that you'd be looking at would be number 2 and number 4. The one, if the commission member has a business or financial interest in the property involved, or has a business or financial interest in the applicant's company, agency, or association. And then 4 is reasonable appearance of a conflict of interest as determined by a majority vote of the remaining members. So of the 7 members, you'd have to have a vote on if there's a reasonable appearance.
I have no business interest. I'm an employee
Of the applicant.
of the applicant.
Yeah, we've used the basis of reasonable appearance in the past,
Yes.
And that
but
would
it's
be my concern.
it's been more it's
We
been
have used that.
I think Alex could do the job and be unbiased, but I'm concerned about perception, right?
So if there's a perception, then a vote has to be taken.
Maybe I'm the only one.
Well, that's why we have the votes, you know.
I think he's fine.
For what
Do
we're
you just wanna
tasked
show
to
by
do
hands, or
tonight,
what do you want?
well.
I think you're fine.
Yeah.
Site plan review.
I'm sorry.
I think from what we're tasked to do tonight,
It's just,
I think
yeah,
he's fine.
agreed.
But at the same time, how you demonstrate consistency from one project to the
Right.
next.
On
Are
the
we
same
verifying,
parcel.
or, no?
That's
Yeah.
the worst part, is if it was
You know
another
what I mean?
parcel
It's-
across the street.
And again, I think Alex is perfectly fine making, participating in this conversation, but at the same time, if we've already recused him for the same parcel in the
Right,
same
yeah,
spot,
yeah.
then how do we,
Not the same process, though.
But again, where do we arbitrarily draw the line as to, and I'm only posing the question because we use the rationale that it was a reasonable appearance, and so do we want to remain consistent on that?
What's the hazard that we're facing by not having him part of the site
Perception.
plan
Perception
review?
only.
For what decision?
Approval or denial.
The applicant is Mitchell's Deli. I understand
Uh,
McGurk is
no.
there, but Mitchell's.
read the.
No, the applicant is actually.
It's a
The owner
Mitchell's
is
Deli
McGurk
and
Mini
Mc-
Storage.
they're both
That's correct,
co-applicants.
but Mitchell's Deli is in it. So could we show by hands in regards to this so that we can move on? In regards to-
Yeah, those who are in favor of Alex recusing himself from this discussion, go ahead and raise your hands. I count 4. Those in favor of him participating, raise your hands. I count 3. So have a seat off to the side.
Okay.
We will call you back.
I'm not.
Okay. All right. So, just to remind you, this was a special use permit for the filling station. We recommended that to the Township Board. Township Board approved it. They're back with the, and we looked at a preliminary site plan. They're back with the final site plan. As of the date your notes were written, it had not received approval from Township Utilities, Road Commission, and MDOT, and Stormwater Management. Is that still?
So to give you guys an update, we've had, since the time of this memo went out, Wednesday, I believe, Thursday. So we've had since then, the only outstanding agency that we lack is Township Utilities. There's, I guess, issues with applications on hazardous waste material, the DEQ application. If you guys noticed those in your site plan applications, they're fairly standard. And so we don't have yet the approval from that agency. I've also talked with the applicant about a lighting plan. Lighting is required a part of Section 12 on a site plan. I can give you the history. This exact same site, the existing building there, and it doesn't no longer have a 1982 East Remus Road. It's now I think a Jens Way, Lexi Lane address. But that project, at the time that we approved that site plan, there was also absent a lighting plan. That plan was approved on the condition that lighting plan would be submitted, staff approved. And so, although we don't, this planning commission has made it clear that they want all the outside agency approvals. They want everything on there before they adopt. It is in your ability to make a condition of approval. The site plan would be approved on the condition that, Township Utility Department approval is met and that a lighting plan is submitted, staff approved. The last time it happened, a lighting plan was submitted. It was a staff approved. It met the requirements of the lighting ordinance. So I don't have any issue if that's the way that you want to go about it. So that's kind of an update since the time that this memo went out to you guys in the packets. Also catch up, this is the site plan that was condition of approval of the special use permit. So we held a public hearing for the filling station, commonly known as a gas station. We made a positive recommendation to the Board of Trustees. The Board of Trustees accepted that recommendation on the condition that a site plan is approved. Board of Trustees adopted it on the condition that a site plan is approved, and so we have the site plan here before us to approve. And the site plan, of course, doesn't just include the filling station, commonly known as a gas station, but it also includes the expansion of Mitchell's Deli, which was also made clear from the get-go, even with the special use permit application. And so those are the only outstanding issues. Outside of that, in my review, the site plan is it meets requirements. We have all the other outside agencies.
Okay, thank you. So, Tim, do you want to walk us through this?
Good evening. My name's Tim Beebe. I'm with Central Michigan Surveying and Development, 2257 Mount Pleasant on Broomfield Road. If we can talk about lighting for a second. This had to go through a special use permit. We came before you, was passed on to the Township Board. As of last week, we finally got the approval. So, in this particular case, much of our lighting is under the canopies for the gas pumps. We got approval last week. I would need to have full architecturals, full electricals, everything done in order to do that. You're talking about a $30,000 plus expense without even knowing whether or not your special use is going to go through. So, no, the lighting is not done. We will turn in a lighting plan. The lighting plan will take into account the canopies and the wall packs. There may not be additional lighting that is required. We are putting those 2 private streets in. We're looking at doing similar lighting along those streets that we did on the other streets. So, but in order to do a photometrics plan, you would have to have the decisions on where wall packs are being placed, how the canopies are going to be lit, and none of that work was going to be done until we knew we could actually have a filling station. So that's why you don't have a lighting plan in front of you, but we're happy to bring it to you for either this board's review at a later date or through staff. And on the last project, the large building, we went through it with staff and the building department. So, as far as the outstanding item, the email that came through today from the utility department asked for some additional information for management of hazardous substances and pollutant materials. It's a checklist that's put together by MDEQ. The gas station itself goes through permitting through DEQ. These are all things that we're going to have to put together. We have our petroleum supplier and their contractor that would be doing that work. They will help me put this information together to get to our DPW director. Very similarly, in her review letter, it said water and sewer are available in the area, but you have to bring me full construction plans. Well, that's true. We have to comply. This is the same type of thing. We fully intend on putting together plan and profile drawings to actually go through the construction portion of her review. We have the ability to put the gas station in and meet these requirements. She's asking for additional information, just like the other plans would be, these plans would be. So, and this is nothing that we won't have to do for permitting actually through DEQ. So it's all things that have to be done. So, I just wanted to clarify when we say we've got outstanding utility department, it's actually just specifically to the gas station component of it and the MDEQ submittal. So, the site plan that you're looking at is identical to the site plan that was submitted to you previously. Routing of traffic, parking counts, everything that you saw in your first brush through on this with the special use is the same. I met with the Drain Commission. We looked at doing a community detention basin for the entire 9.54 acres that are there. That basin is sized to take 80% impervious surface across that 9 acres, or 9.5 acres. That's the detention basin that you see there. On the grading plan, which was the plan previous, Peter, it shows all the storm sewer piping, grades. We have all our approvals. We've gone through with the road commission. I met with the road commission. He reminded me that this is his busy season and he would get it in as quickly as he could. I'm not sure. Peter, did you get it any sooner than this morning?
Whose approval?
Pat's. I think his finally came in an email this morning. It was either this morning or yesterday
Yeah,
morning.
I can't remember which one it.
But we did finally tie down and tackle everybody and get them to get their written approvals in. Summertime, it is difficult with the road commission, and Bruce Rohr just as an update, is feeling much better. He is back to work. We shouldn't be seeing dramatic delays. He's coming in 2 or 3 times a week now. So we should be back on schedule with him. But I believe I have all your approvals that you need. Yes, there's some outstanding items, but they're outstanding items for specific reasons and very good reasons. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you do have. Yes, sir.
I'm curious about, what you had on the screen previously, Peter, did not look exactly what I'm looking at, exactly what I'm looking, like what I'm looking at here on paper. But I'm just curious about the sidewalk. Why does the sidewalk not go to the corner? It comes in significantly off the corner in terms of crosswalk there.
That was a discussion with the road commission, and in fact, they don't want the crosswalk being put out to Lincoln Road. They will do that in their project. That entire radius is going to be flattened out.
So when you say they would do that in their project, when they
have a road project that they're proposing that's
and that they would address crosswalk issues at that point.
on Lincoln Road, but not on M20.
Okay.
What was agreed to with MDOT and the road commission was wherever McDonald's ends up, because the plans that they have turned into MDOT are not approved and are not accepted.
Yeah.
Once they agree on where that crosswalk is to be, we have to line up with it, wherever it ends up being. So we will slide that as we need to in order to meet up with the crosswalk on the other side.
So would that prompt another site plan review if they had to adjust the sidewalk there, or is that just a staffing approval?
No, the building official and I, we've been in contact with MDOT. We talked about the McDonald's site specifically and how it would impact the project across the street, this project. And so, no, it's something that they'll work out with themselves in the building process.
Okay.
So if that's done, who has the authority to make sure that the sidewalk gets routed to where it needs to be? That's not something, you're telling me that's MDOT or the road commission or?
When you say routing, so
right now the sidewalk doesn't get close to the corner, so I'm assuming a crosswalk would be closer to the corner?
It would be on that straight section, just more than likely, just west of the catch
Right,
basin.
that would be my guess too. So, having said that, where will the requirement be to reroute the sidewalk from where it's at to that spot?
The tag, the 3-foot tag or the ramp that's going to go down, is that what you're talking about? Or?
No, what's the trigger that makes you put that in if we don't require it now?
It is required.
But it's not drawn that way is my point.
Because you tell me where the location is. I clouded that area and said that it would be coordinated.
But on this drawing, it shows it's not clouded in. It shows the sidewalk.
What are you talking about?
The drawing I have does not match that.
No.
And so, just a clarification, the drawing, the plans that you guys had mailed out were pre the MDOT Road Commission Stormwater Plan approvals, and so the site plan that we have up here is the one that has been revised according to the
According to their review comments.
their review comments.
That makes a lot more sense because that looks much closer to the corner than what my plans look like on paper.
Yeah, it is, and the only reason that it has the 45 on it is that corner. If you take a look at that corner, the trucks bounce over that corner all the time. They're going to be flattening that corner out with the radius. So the road commission asked me to 45 it around that corner.
So you know what I'm looking at then, right? The old plans where it's coming.
Yep.
So you understand why I was asking, and why
Yeah.
Yeah,
Commissioner
no, if
Buckley
you-
was asking?
If you look
Yeah.
up, if you look up there, and then on that set of plans, it states that crosswalk, it says refer to note, and you go down,
Yeah, well,
it says,
I see.
look
Okay.
at,
Thank you.
It's gonna
Thank
be,
you.
MDOT's the one that is
Right.
going to tell me where it must line up.
Okay.
Right, but now you understand why I was asking the
Yeah.
question.
That makes
So-
more sense.
So Peter, do we have hard, if we were to approve this tonight, do we have hard copies that the secretary can write on, any conditions or anything, the approval that matches that?
I don't believe we have a hard copy of, we have the digital copy, but,
We need two, right?
yeah.
You got
have a
two?
copier.
You're good. Thank you, Tim.
So, but yeah, that trigger would be with
Yeah, I-
MDOT.
This makes more sense now that I see this. I've been looking at this prior to the meeting and
Yeah.
the meeting.
No, actually, that detention area, one of the other things you'll notice is that catch basin, there's a note on that sheet that says that catch basin's gonna be raised up, that's not gonna be a divot in there anymore,
Mhm.
so that it's going to, it will remain. The drain office wants it raised up, I forgot if it was a foot or a foot and a half, so that area will still drain, but it's more conducive to putting the sidewalks through that area, it's gonna be more of a lawn area. So that area right in there has changed quite a bit from the initial submittal. We bounce back and forth between MDOT, the road commission, and the drain office quite a bit. And again, this is their busy season, so tying them down is not easy.
Peter, you're comfortable with that process?
Yeah, no, one of the things that we looked at was when, the building official I met with, a couple of, people from MDOT, is we had before, at the time, the draft for, this project and the approved draft of, McDonald's, and they were comparing them, and, you know, that was their questions, is how are these two gonna line up? So,
And theirs is much more difficult to work with. Ours, we can slide up and down.
Right.
So we'll match wherever.
That makes sense.
Did I miss the waste dumpster?
That's what I was wondering about
Enclosed
too.
waste dumpster?
You now have a dumpster?
There's not a dumpster.
I mean, I know your outside eating's on this side, so I can't imagine you're gonna stick it over here, but
There's a dumpster.
What's that?
say again?
On ours, it's not.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
No, there isn't on either. There isn't on
I
either.
thought it was a thing. You wanna draw one in there real quick?
It's going to need to be at the rear of the site, and the bullnose that's by where the gas fill,
Oh.
where it says install.
Mm-hmm.
Nope, wrong one.
To the right, down, down,
Down.
down, down, right, oop,
Up.
too far up.
See where it says fire protection line?
We know.
Okay, go straight up, install. I think he's just playing with me.
Install?
Install.
install.
Right, no, right there. No.
It's in a curb island.
Got
Right there.
install on
Okay.
there way too many times.
Yep. That's where it would need to go. It's on the access drive at the rear. I apologize. I
Is-
completely missed that.
Facing this way or face?
It's
We're
gonna,
definitely need one.
Cause, yeah,
it would be facing internally so that they could come through the traffic pattern, past the canopy and pick up. And the gates would swing interiorly into the site.
okay.
I apologize. That is not something I should have missed.
Can we give Peter approval of that? Approval, right, staff approval on that kind of a thing?
Peter, you comfortable with that? If we,
Sure.
Okay.
I only had one concern, again, the dumpster, I missed that one too, is, and we've talked about this, multiple times, is that there's going to be an increase in traffic in this area. And we have a residential district, very close, and there's just that one building on the curve that's probably not well screened. And as we continue to develop this site, whether we can be more, concerned about our residents to the south.
Where are you?
Well, I can only look at this one, and I'm assuming that this is the one building, and it doesn't have any screening.
But it's on the other side of the road, so there's nothing we can do about it.
Other side,
Well,
two roads.
I'm
Yeah.
saying that here's a time that we possibly could do that.
I mean, call the apartment complex and tell them to stick a tree there or something.
Well, I
Separate
disagree with
parcel.
you,
I don't
Commissioner
think
Cody,
we
but
have any-
here is, as an increase, continues to develop this, and whether we should be aware that as we continue to develop this parcel, that residential area needs to be protected.
Except the issue is this is a separate parcel, right?
Yep.
I mean, we can tell
My stupid chair.
the applicant that it'd be nice to continue to think about that.
Good neighbors.
And there's approximately 4.5 to 5 acres that parallels that parcel
Yep, to the south.
that would lie between those two private roads that would be coming in. We're a football field away, and although I don't like to play that card, there's no screening requirement, and it wasn't brought up in the special use for the filling station.
I think there was some discussion, but I think the feeling was that it wasn't abutting the property that you might want to try to screen, so it was hard to make I think we went back and forth on this, but we ultimately didn't require anything.
And I'm just gonna say that I disagree with that. I think that, again, from a business, and as we think about the growth in the business, that we need to protect our residents, so.
I agree with you, Denise, just for record. If I felt the legal tools to require it, I would. But
I thought that when we had the discussion during the special use, because I would support screening as well, but I thought that when we had the discussion that we decided that we didn't have the authority to require it.
Right. Correct.
Correct.
We need not discuss this any further. I understand. I'm just making my
Okay.
voice
Commissioner
note.
Cody?
Can I make a motion that we approve SPR 2019-06 on the condition that utility approval is met and lighting submitted, received, and approved by staff? And with the agreed position of the dumpster approved by staff.
I'll support that.
All right, so the motion was by Cody, the second was by Milky to approve the site plan with the stated conditions. Let's make sure we have all the stated conditions.
I wrote it down.
Okay. Do you want to restate them?
The condition that the utility approval is met and the lighting submitted, received, and staff approved, and the position of the dumpster is approved by staff.
Okay. Yeah, enclosed dumpster shown on plan and approved by staff. I wanted to ask a question. We won't be long, but the exit off, or the egress off onto 20, is that 2 lanes?
Yeah, that's 2 lanes.
Okay. So if someone wants to make a left, whoever's behind them will wait. Okay. The one further to the west that has the island on it, is that right side 2 lanes?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And the encouragement is to send them farther west. If they want to turn left,
So they'll have the option of going around and,
in the end, that road is going to come out, you can see that ghosted in with the next project.
Hmm.
That will be extended to line up and make an intersection. And all of that will be interconnected with the private roads. So we're trying to get no personal access out on any of the roads. You come to
an intersection of a private interior road.
Yeah, okay. All right, and that's that building that we've shown the mock-ups of, that's still in the planning stages.
I'm hoping that we'll be here before too long.
Okay, okay. All right, any other discussion? Yes.
Peter, you're comfortable you've had time to review those plans versus these plans? Okay. And I know I've asked this a few times, but I have to ask it again. Regarding the sidewalk connection to ramps for crosswalk potential, you're comfortable that that will come to pass, right?
Yeah, right, because when the sidewalk, it's gonna go through its own building permit, with the process, and so there could be changes that are made. But, you know, it's worked out at the building permit process.
Great.
Any other questions or comments? Ready to vote? All those in favor of approving SPR 2019-06 stated. Welcome back. We're at full strength again. Full strength for tonight anyway.
Thank you.
See you, John.
So we have one more actual business item before we move on to other, and that is we approved a special use permit a year ago for a bank with a drive-through out on, off of Pickard, right out here. And they've modified their project. They're no longer planning a drive-through. And the suggestion is that we ought to take back the SUP. I think it makes sense.
So we've dealt with an SUP tonight, so it's probably fresh in your mind. As we went over the criteria 1 through 10, 10B states in instances where development authorized by a special use permit has not commenced within 1 year from the date of issuance, the permit may be reconsidered and or voided at a regularly called meeting of the Planning Commission. And so Mercantile Bank has been in contact with the township, working on a building permit to get started. And they looked at their plans and they decided, due to funding, budgetary reasons, they decided to reduce the size of the building from a 2-story to the 1-story. This was a simple enough change that I was going to administratively approve. The second part of that change, though, was they had no desire anymore for the drive-through. And if you recall, the drive-through is what made this bank a special use. The bank is allowed, but when you add the drive-through, it becomes a special use. And so I can't have the ability to myself void or reconsider the special use aspect of it. And so given that the bank no longer has any desire to use the special use that has been afforded to them, approved by the township board, I'm bringing this for you to either reconsider, void, and so at which time, if the bank or if a future applicant would like to add a drive-through to the building, we will have the time to consider that application as its own new special use at that time.
So you just need a motion to void the special use permit as
Or is that a recommendation?
I'm recommending that you void it.
Okay, I move to recommend the voiding of the SUP.
Well, we have the power to void it, correct? It's not a
Yes.
recommendation to the
Okay,
board.
so then
Is that right?
Yeah, no, where the board comes in is if the special use permit may be revoked in the sense that a requirement condition was not met, the Board of Trustees. But in the issuance of development not commenced within 1 year of the date of issuance, which it'll, I believe, be 1 year coming up pretty shortly here, that you have the ability to reconsider or avoid it.
Do we need to wait till then?
Well, they'd like to get started, and this is something that I didn't want to leave hanging out as part of the, I mean, it
So
was,
they've requested that it be voided.
yes.
I support Commissioner Webster's motion.
Okay, so your motion
Oh,
is
she made a
to,
motion.
is to
I was gonna
void
make a
the
motion.
Void it as
SUP.
requested,
Okay, good.
by the applicant.
Okay.
I missed that, I'm sorry. I was gonna make a motion.
I'll wait till our secretary is done with that. All right, so there's a motion been made by Webster to void SUP 2018-03
As requested by the applicant.
as requested by the applicant. and there was a second by Buckley. Any further discussion?
Just had a question.
Yes.
Void and reconsider, those are synonymous terms?
No, void,
No,
voiding it.
because it's using the language reconsider here, but now we're talking about void.
Well, what does the ordinance says void, right?
No, I
It
think-
says reconsidered and or voided at a regularly called meeting, planning
Okay.
commission.
And that's the ordinance.
Mhm.
Okay.
I think we reconsidered it and we decided to void it.
Gotcha.
Any other discussion?
No.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it's voided. All right, so, other business, you were gonna talk to us about the special meeting?
Yep. So there was a doodle poll sent out at our last special meeting with the consultant. I believe it was sections 6 through 10 that we were aiming to get through. We got through, I believe, 75–80% of section 6. The rest of the sections we were not able to complete, and so we discussed meeting again, the planning commission by itself, without the consultant, to finish going through section 6 and then following 7 through 10, and then getting those comments back to the consultant and meeting with them again after we had our own special meeting to work out those sections. So dates were provided. The most immediate upcoming meeting, where we have 8 out of the 9 commissioners who have said they're available, would be Tuesday, June 25th, 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock. We also have a July 23rd, which is also on a Tuesday, from 6 to 8 o'clock, where 8 out of the 9 commissioners have indicated they would be available. So, unless you want to wait until July 23rd, we can move forward with 8 out of the 9 on Tuesday, June 25th, 6 to 8. And if you feel you still need an additional more time, you know in advance that you also have a July 23rd meeting where 8 out of the 9 commissioners would be available. So,
I would suggest we do it early, and if we need more time,
I agree.
I mean, it is me
Good.
that, I can send notes if, I have questions or something. I can't make the 25th one. So,
And then I was the one for the 23rd.
so I mean, I can just send notes if that's
Right.
okay.
yeah.
Yep. I say go with the 25th, and we'll decide if we need additional time after that.
Yes, I agree.
So I'll send out an email reminding the board that we'll have a special meeting June 25th, Tuesday, 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock, to review sections, or to finish reviewing sections 6 through 10.
All right. Anything else on that? All right, extended public comment. Anyone who'd like to address the planning commission on any item, whether it was on tonight's agenda or not, we ask you to give us your name and address for the minutes and limit your comments to 5 minutes. Extended public comments open at 9:33. Okay, good. So we'll go ahead and close that back up. Final board comment. Anybody?
I know it's late, but I gotta say it. Ryan's comments on the SUP for public and institutional use, I really struggled, because I knew where you're coming from regarding, they might not be able to go anywhere hardly. And I struggle with that, because it's a necessary service. Anyways, that was a tough one for me because of that. But if it was across from my home, I couldn't be proven. But, so I have a concern that our zoning ordinance doesn't address it. I mean, that's the concern I have.
The new one shows it as a permitted use in
I mean, it's still going to the board,
industrial.
Right, but our existing doesn't really list recycling.
Yeah, recycling
Right.
facility. It'd almost be a warehousing, because they're gonna store this stuff and then somebody gonna
Well,
come get it.
the only thing they're gonna store for a short period of time is maybe the electrical, but nothing else is going to be stored.
I bet it's like
So
12 months.
therefore, I would disagree with that comment. I thought that was probably the best place for it, but,
Well,
along that road, at Mission, I mean, again, what's happening along
Well,
that Mission.
yeah, and I'm not trying to belabor or relitigate that as much as say I'm concerned. I think what I took from Ryan was your argument that if we're not allowing it here, where does it allow it? Is that accurate statement?
Yeah, yeah.
And I
Right.
agree, I kept looking through the zoning code going, I'm not sure, outside of a couple industrial, in fact, in industrial, I'm not sure I could allow it, because it doesn't list that use specifically.
Although I could make the argument that it is a retail. I mean, they're accepting material and they're selling it, so.
Okay.
They
I
are.
can buy into that.
Well, that's the.
I can't buy into that.
They're not
They're selling the
to
material.
public.
But they're selling shrubs and it's, oh, wow.
It's like an antique store.
And store it for until it sells.
I did just go to an MTA meeting, it said follow your master plan, so that's, I mean, they said always
Well, and that's
follow.
what I struggled with, was the fact that it's outside of our growth boundary. And if I felt like, if this was the third time they'd come to us and said, we've been looking and this is the only parcel we can find, then I might have even been a little bit more obnoxious about my support of it. But they haven't done that, and they haven't looked around for other, at least they didn't express that they'd looked around for other parcels. So I hope they come back to us with another location.
Yeah, I guess my point is, I want to make sure as we're going through the new zoning ordinance, that we feel comfortable that it addresses this particular kind of case, right?
Yeah, and I think that we have to decide for ourselves whether or not that's considered a public, is a recycling facility even, does it fall under that type of classification?
Yeah. I wanted to make a comment on this because while we were having this discussion, I was thinking back to the road commission thing. A lot of it, although it was a much smaller scale, I felt that the dynamics were very similar. And the same thought occurred to me at that meeting, which was, if you were a government entity that's a government entity that ordinarily people have a favorable feeling about, or at least they view as a very necessary or useful sort of thing, and you had your eye on a piece of property, why wouldn't you talk to the neighbors and try to enlist their support and maybe educate and see if, test the waters and see whether, you know, what the reaction was going to be before you went to all of this trouble? Because granted, you know, we're supposed to be the decision-making body and we're supposed to, you know, use our judgment and so on, but, you know, anytime you have that many people, you know, really up in arms about something, it's going to have to be a really slam dunk in the other direction for me to go against that. But if they would have, you know, talked to the neighbors, and if the neighbors were a bit more muted in their concerns, then you have a lot more to work with.
The thing is, it's happening right now, just down the street.
That's what I had a difficult.
So
everything that they're
they don't
doing
want
is-
it in their backyard. We're going to have that everywhere. So where do you? So like you said, if I'm trying to sell people, I'm going to take it to a place that doesn't have neighbors looking over the fence.
Yeah, probably it will. Although, to be honest with you, when you look at the building, when you actually think about what's going to be going on there, I don't think it's that terrible a thing.
It's happening in everybody's garage.
Again, though, this is final board comment, not final board discussion.
I don't disagree with that.
72,000 people in the county could bring all their stuff within
I
500
gotta pick my
feet
kid
of
up,
somebody's
so
house.
can I, is it okay if I go?
Well, does that mean everything
Yeah.
else is shutting down? Does that mean
So-
Township's not having their recycle day?
Right.
I didn't hear that as part of the plan.
So
Yeah, 'cause right now,
we have people that want to leave.
Yeah.
So we've completed our agenda, so without further ado, we'll stand in adjournment until our, well, actually, probably, until our special meeting, and then we'll have our regular July meeting.
Next Tuesday, right?
Yeah, next Tuesday.